Mary is visiting, and this time around, she comes with Joseph and 2 other young children. At the time that this incident took place, I was 13 years old, Joseph was 14, and the other 2 young children are under the age of 10. My dad goes to work and leaves us alone with Mary. It was not unusual for my dad to work on weekends because he was a banker. Mary is doing her rounds around the house and finds a broken key in the cupboard door. So she calls all 4 of us and asks us who broke the key in the lock. We all say we didn't do it. Then Mary tells the 2 younger children to leave her room and tells me and Joseph to stay. She looks at the both of us and says, nothing bad will happen to you if you confess, but if you continue to lie, I'm going to start beating you. Me and Joseph are like, we didn't break the key in the lock, and we keep saying that over and over again. I didn't fucking break the key in the lock, and I'm not going to confess to something that I did not do. Mary then says, oh, so you guys want to lie, right? Okay, no problem. And then she starts telling us, confess, confess. I know that one of you did it. Confess, confess. And we keep saying we didn't break the key in the lock. And as we're saying we didn't break it, she starts to beat us. Like she starts to punch us and just like throw punches and slaps, beating us and saying, confess, confess. I know one of you did it. Confess, confess. At this point, we're both crying and saying we didn't do it. And we're literally begging her to stop beating us. When Mary realizes that we're not going to budge on our answers and we're going to keep saying, no, we didn't do it, she stops beating us with her hand and she picks up a shower curtain rod that is on the floor and she starts to beat us. The force that she uses is so hard that the shower curtain rod bent as a result of it. Like she was beating us so hard that the shower curtain rod ended up bending. The entire time, we're crying and begging her and saying we did not do it, we did not break the key in the lock. Once the shower rod bends, she throws it on the ground and then tells us to pick pin. For those who are not African or Nigerian, pick pin is a form of punishment that's typically used in secondary schools, especially boarding schools. I'm going to demonstrate it now. Now, pickpin is what you would describe as corporal punishment, and even in secondary school, you didn't have the kids doing it for longer than a minute or 2. But because Mary is a sadistic person, she had us stay in that position for a while. And when you're doing pickpin, your leg starts to shake because you're literally balancing on one leg and your finger. So every time our legs would start shaking and we would fall out of the position, she would come and start beating us and tell us like, get back into the position, get back into the position. So Mary would alternate between beating us every time we fell out of the position and screaming at us to confess to breaking the key in the lock. I just remember being in that position, crying silently and thinking in my head, what the hell is going on? I did not break this key. Why does this woman want us to confess to something that we did not do? I don't know how long we stayed in that position, but we were picking pin until my dad came back home from work. Of course, when my dad comes home, Mary immediately goes to him and tells him that she's punishing me because I broke a key in a lock and I don't want to confess. And she's also punishing Joseph because she suspects that he did it and I'm protecting him and he's protecting me. My dad comes into her room, sees us picking pin and starts to go in on us like, why did you guys break the key? Why are you guys lying? Confess, confess. And my dad now starts to hit me as well. Like, confess, why are you lying? Why are you lying? So now there are 2 adults who are yelling and screaming at 2 young children and telling them to confess to something that they did not do. Not once did my dad tell Mary to stop punishing us and beating us and accusing us of doing something that we did not do. Instead, he leaves us in that room with her and goes upstairs to change out of his work clothes. Mary then releases us from the pick-pin position and continues to beat us and tell us to confess. This went on for hours. I remember it got dark before we got released. At some point, Mary leaves her room to go and get my dad's dinner ready. And Joseph looks at me and says, I'm just going to confess that I did it because I don't know if this is ever going to end. When Mary comes back, she says, are you guys ready to confess? And Joseph says, yes, I'm the one that broke the key in the lock. After Mary gets her confession, she calls us names and tells us to go back to our room, and we cry ourselves to sleep. Now, this experience happened when I was 13 years old, but when I was 25, one of the younger kids who was in the house then confesses to being the one who broke the key in the lock. Mary is around when this confession happens, and I look at her and I say, do you remember how you beat the hell out of me and Joseph because you thought that we did it even though we didn't do it? And you know what Mary does? She lifts up her dress and shows me a scar on her thigh, and she's like, well, my mother did this to me, so what's the big deal? It's in the past, get over it. Mary wanted me to forget the fact that she pummeled me and beat me so viciously for something that I did not do. She wanted me to forget the fact that she picked up a shower curtain rod and beat me so badly and so forcefully that the shower curtain rod bent. She wants me to forget the fact that she called me names and was basically trying to force me to confess to something that I didn't do, and even went as far as recruiting my father to join in the violence. And because her own mother scarred her so terribly, she felt like she didn't have any reason to apologize or even say what I did was wrong and I shouldn't have done it. And guess what? The next day, both Mary and my father acted like nothing happened. I had to go to school on Monday like I didn't just get beaten within an inch of my life 2 days ago. The reason the actual perpetrator didn't confess when they were asked was because they knew that if they said that they were the one that broke the key in the lock, Mary would have beaten the hell out of them. So they kept quiet and watched and listened as Joseph and I were crying and begging for our literal lives. I will never forgive and I will never forget.